part of section 10.2. Well, we will talk about how to calculate partial payment to a known. Okay, so let's see what is a partial payment. A partial payment is just a payment a consumer made prior to the due date, but less than the full amount of known. So, for example, you know $100, you make for a month, and you make a partial payment of $50 in the middle of the month. So that's a partial payment because it's less than the full amount of $100. Also, it's made prior to the due date. Okay, so when you make a partial payment, part of the payment will be used to pay the interest. Part of the partial payment will be used to credit it to the principal. But how to using what rule? How to calculate those two different credits? Um, this rule in US is called United States rule. That is actually decided by the Supreme Court. Okay, so let's see what exactly this rule does. The United States rule states that if a partial payment is made on the known, interest is computed on the principal from the first day of the known until the date of the partial payment. So here's the idea. Okay, let me draw a picture. So let's see, if we look at the timeline t, okay, and this is t, and let's say it's t equals 0, or and then let's see here, that's the due date of the known. Okay, let's say there is a partial payment that comes in. Okay, let's say at t equals to t1. Okay, so this is a partial payment. So let's assume it to be p partial payment. Okay, let's initially, let's see, there is a known p sub 0. Okay, and this time we can denote it by, let's say, t01. Okay, so you always need to calculate how the time period between two time points. Okay, so now for the partial payment, you first need to pay interest. So interest in this case, we're going to use a simple interest. So equals to I, let's say I from 0 to 1, t0 to t1, equals to the p, well, actually the initial, let me see, the principal before this payment, the principal or the remaining principal before this payment is p sub 0 times the interest rate, that's assuming it's I, and then times t01. So that's the interest needs to be paid. Okay, so, and then if there is remaining money out of little p, so let's say p minus I01 will be credited to make a payment to the principal, okay, to the principal. So p minus I sub 0 will be subtracted from p0. So that is remaining principal is P0 minus P minus I01. Okay, so it's always calculated this way. So P, the partial payment, equals to the interest I01 plus um, plus obviously P minus I01. Okay, this part is the interest, and this part is made to the principal. Okay, to principal. Okay, so that's the idea. Let's see. So I already talked about this, and also that when we calculate the period between two time points, we use Banker's rule. That is, assuming a year has 360 days, and if it's less than a year, then you use the exact number of days to calculate the time period. Okay, so I will illustrate this in the next example. Now, nowadays, we always use computer program to calculate the number of days between two dates, so it becomes straightforward. But before computer era, it is actually quite complicated to calculate the number of days between two dates because different months might have different days. Some months have 31 days, some months have 30 days, and February has 28 days. Also, you have issues of leap year or non-leap year. So it becomes complicated to calculate the number of days between two dates before computer era. So in practice, before using computer program, people can use this table to help to decide the number of days between two dates. So in this table, cross across the top from left to right, it lists the months from January, February, March until December. Also, before the name of each month, you see the number of days for each month, right? And then across the table from top to bottom is the number of days in a month. So day one, day two, day three. If you look at next table, starting from day 16 to day 31, right? So the first month, you see the first column has 31 days, but and February 1st is actually the 32 days in a year. So the number you see in the table indicates the number of days starting from the beginning of a year. Okay, example, 97th day is actually day 7 of April here. Okay, and 277 days. That's actually day 4 in October. So that's how you read this table. Okay. All right. And a year is assumed to have 365 days when you calculate the exact number of days between two dates. All right, let's look at this example. It'll make all the rules become clearer. Okay, so this example is important and also very illustrative. Let's say Mrs. Panic is a teacher, mathematics teacher, and she loaned 120 days loan for $400 to pay for her airfare. Okay, and this loan is made on November 1st, 2014, and the interest rate 12.5%. Again, this is per year, right? So also she made a partial payment of $150 on January 5th, 2015. Notice she um, got the loan, obtained the loan in 2014, November 1st. Okay, but her first partial payment it was made in the next year, 2015, and also she made another partial payment, $100 on February 2nd, 2015. Okay, so that's this, and that's the first determine the due date of the loan. Remember, the due date is um, the loan is 120 days, and it was made on November 1st, 2014. Okay, so we first noticed that from the previous the date table, we found November 1st is the 305th day of a year. So let's check that. Um, so we're talking about November 1st would be this, so that you see November 1st is 305th day of a year, okay? And the loan it has a expiration time of 120 days. So therefore, to find out when the loan is due, so use 305 and then you move 120 days forward. So you add 120 to 305, get 425, where that's bigger than the total number of days of a year. So you need to, because it actually goes from 2014 to 2015, so across a year, end of a year. So therefore, you need to subtract 365 from 425, you get 60. So that means that it's a 60 days in the second year, and we can use the table again to help us to determine what is that date. It's 6 days in a year, that's actually March 1st, right? So, okay, so this help us to decide the due date is March 1st, 2014, okay? So next we want to determine how much is credited to interest and how much is credited to the principal um, from her first partial payment. So now I can draw a timeline, it becomes clear. So initially November 1st, um, 2014, she made $400 loan, and then on January 5th, she made a partial payment of $150, right? So that partial payment partially pays for interest, partially pays for principal. So how we do the calculation here? Well, first we need to decide how many days between November 1st, 2014 and January 5th, 2015, right? So, well, January 5th, of course, is the fifth day of the year, and November 1st, earlier already uh, looked up, it was the 305th day of a year. So, because it goes from 1 year, end of 1 year to the next year. So what you do is you use 365 the end of the year minus November 1st, which is 305, the number 305 day, and then you add the number of days in the new year, 5. So you get 65. So that means that you got 65 days. Okay, here. Um, and then you just simply use formula to calculate the interest. So P, the previous unpaid balance is 400, the interest rate 12.5%, convert that to decimal 0.125, right? And T needs to converted it to year, where there are 65 days from the beginning until January 5th. And then we use a banker's rule, 360 as the total number of days in a year. So when you convert 65 to year, 65 days to year, you need to divide 65 days by 360. Now this rule is a little bit favorable to banks. Okay. Well, the reason is that because we use a smaller number than the actual number of days in a year in the denominator, so you get a larger interest. That means the bank gets more money out of lending money to you. So using 360, the banker's rule is actually favorable to banks. Unfortunately, not favorable to consumers. So we got 903 interest. So that should be deducted from the partial payment 150, leaving the difference 140.97 to be credited to the unpaid principal. So the adjusted principal or the latest principal would be the initial principal 400 minus the credit 140.97 is that, okay? So which basically means the following. Now the balance is, so the principal balance is 259.03, and this is on January 5th, okay? That's it. And then that's basically as if she got a new loan on January 5th with a principal 259.03. Okay, so now we remember next she made another partial payment, $100, right? $100 on February 2nd. So we just repeat the same calculation here. The little bit easier thing is that January 5th and February 2nd are in the same year. So we need to figure out how many days are there between those 2 days, right? So we're going to use a table. If you use a table, you find February 2nd corresponding to the 33rd days, okay? And January 5th, we already knew it corresponds to the 5th day. So therefore, the number of days between the 2 dates are 33 minus 5, 28 days, okay? And then, interest is P, R, and T. T is now 28 days, again, using bankers rule divided by 360, that give you the interest 252, okay? Again, this 252 should be deducted from the partial payment 100, and the remaining 97.48 will be used to credit to the principal. So then the remaining principal would be our unpaid principal would be 259.03 minus the credit equals to this 161.55. So that's as of February 2nd, the unpaid balance or unpaid principal is $161.55. And then the due date is March 1st, right? March 1st, we need to calculate again how many days between those 2 days and calculate the interest, and then the total payment will be interest plus the unpaid principal. Okay, so the very similar calculation. We notice that March 1st is 60 days of a year, which we looked up earlier, and we know February 2nd is 33rd day of a year, so 60 minus 33 equal 27 days. So that's the number of days between February 2nd to March 1st. Then we just use the same formula to calculate the interest, the unpaid balance, unpaid principal balance, multiplied to the interest rate, multiplied by the time, converted to year. Again, divided by 360, you get $1.51 for the interest. Okay, so therefore the total balance due on March 1st is unpaid principal plus interest and equals to that. So that's how you calculate the partial payment and how much of the partial payment is credited to the interest and how much of the partial payment is credited to the principal. When you borrow a mortgage to buy a home, the calculation will be similar, which we will talk about in the next section. Okay. Thank you very much. I will see you next time. Bye.